At 3 p.m. Central, the National Weather Service Birmingham issued a tornado warning for Marion County, with language meteorologists reserve for the worst-case scenario.
And so northern Alabama, that's the greatest threat area there. 100% chance of a tornado within 50 miles.
No, these radars are very sensitive, and you can actually see the debris being picked up by these tornadoes in some cases.
Yeah, and one of those in northern Alabama has a debris ball. That's indicative of debris being picked up. And it's this storm here up near Russellville. For reference, here's Huntsville, so it's generally heading that way toward the Moulton area.
Silence, then a rumble, deep, guttural, getting louder. Roger Kendrick cracks open the door to wave in a worker from the parking lot. The sound hits him, a freight train bearing down from their blind spot. He slams the door. 14 people dive under desks in the Wrangler plant's front office. Wade Hagedorn, plant manager, counts to 10 in his head. The building disintegrates. 369,000 square feet of steel and concrete torn apart, chewed up, spit out in 10 seconds. When Hagedorn opens his eyes, he's staring at open sky through a twisted lattice of I-beams. Around him, voices calling out in the rubble. You there? You there? You there?
Holy shit. It sounds like a fucking train. It really does sound like a train. It really does sound like a train. Get in there. Oh my God. Sarah, listen, it sounds like a train.
I've never been in.
Listen.
Wednesday, April 27th, 2011. The largest tornado outbreak in recorded American history. 362 tornadoes in 4 days. 216 of them on this single afternoon. 4 rated E5, the highest intensity on the enhanced Fujita scale. Winds exceeding 200 miles per hour. The kind of atmospheric violence that occurs statistically less than once per year in the entire United States. One of those 4 E5s became a 102-mile scar across northern Alabama. It lasted 2 hours and 35 minutes, reached a maximum width of 1.2 to 5 miles, killed 72 people, injured at least 145 more. The Hackleburg Phil Campbell tornado, the deadliest single tornado in Alabama history, a fast-moving catastrophe that scoured pavement from roads, swept anchored homes from foundations, and threw pairs of jeans 40 miles through the sky. This is the story of what happened when a perfect atmospheric setup collided with small-town America. When seconds mattered, when everything you knew disappeared in the time it takes to count to 10.
To Madison County, and I'm seeing an inflow notch, which is an indication that very strong winds are blowing into this storm, and I'm seeing a debris ball on the radar, which is an indication that there is more than likely a tornado on the ground at this time. Very pronounced velocity signature with this particular cell. Storm track went in quickly. We need to get to some other storms that are going on, but I want to let you guys know what's going on. Tony, 3 minutes. It's on your doorstep in Harvest. You need to be in your tornado shelter. Around 9 minutes to New Sharon, 12 minutes to Hazel Green, 25 minutes until the Fayette.
The warning started 5 days early. Meteorologists at the Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma, don't often see synoptic setups like the one forming over the central United States in late April 2011. A powerful upper-level trough digging into the southern plains, a stalled frontal boundary draped across the southeast, warm, moist Gulf air colliding with dry continental flow. By April 22nd, the medium-range models were unanimous. Something big was coming. By April 25th, 3 days out, the SPC issued a Day 3 outlook with a moderate risk across Arkansas through Tennessee. The message was clear: prepare for a multi-day severe weather event with the potential for significant tornadoes. April 26th brought tornadoes, 55 confirmed across the South. Long-tracked wedges carved through rural Texas and Louisiana. An EF5 destroyed structures at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. But remarkably, no one died. It was the atmospheric dress rehearsal for what was coming.
Right there.
Where is
That's,
it?
just shoot right there, bud. Shoot. That's it, right there. Over them trees that you can see.
Wow.
Is he parked? Yeah. Come over
Yeah,
right there.
That's it right there, rotate counterclockwise right there.
Where you go?
Where is
They said
he?
one done hit Anderson Hills over at Tornado.
At 4 a.m. on April 27th, Birmingham meteorologist James Spann got the call he'd been dreading. The first tornado warning. Spann had been in broadcasting since 1973. 48 years old. A fixture in Alabama homes, the man Central Alabamians turned to when the sky went dark. He'd planned to work from home that morning before heading to the ABC 3340 studios. Instead, he rushed in.
Yeah, look at that smoke, man.
The morning brought a quasi-linear convective system, a squall line embedded with rotating mesovortices. Not the discrete supercells forecasters feared most, but dangerous nonetheless. Spann and meteorologist Jason Simpson began what would become an 18-hour broadcast marathon. Spann alone would stay on air for 10 consecutive hours. The morning round killed 5 people, caused extensive damage, knocked out power to thousands, and it was just the warm-up.
I can't get a...
At 6 to 10 UTC 1:10 a.m. Central Time, the Storm Prediction Center issued something rarely seen, a second consecutive high-risk Day 1 outlook. High-risk outlooks are the SPC's most urgent warning level, reserved for days when they expect numerous strong to violent tornadoes, widespread destruction, significant casualties. The April 27th high risk wasn't just routine, it was extraordinary. The outlook showed a 45% hatched tornado probability across portions of Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, and Georgia. Translation: nearly 1 in 2 chance that any given point in the risk area would see a tornado within 25 miles. The discussion used phrases like explosive supercell development, significant tornado threat, and long-track violent tornadoes. By afternoon, particularly dangerous situation tornado watches, the most severe type of watch the NWS issues, were draped across Dixie Alley. The atmosphere over northern Alabama on the afternoon of April 27, 2011, was loaded for violence. Surface dew points surged into the low 70s Fahrenheit, moisture streaming north from the Gulf of Mexico on a screaming low-level jet clocking 67 miles per hour at 850 millibars. Convective available potential energy CAPE, the fuel for thunderstorm updrafts, measured between 2,500 and 3,000 joules per kilogram. Explosive instability. But instability alone doesn't make tornadoes. You need shear, and April 27th had shear in abundance. A deep, negatively tilted upper-level trough pivoted over Arkansas and Louisiana, creating immense wind speed and directional changes with height. 0 to 1 kilometer storm relative helicity exceeded 500 meters squared per second. That's a parameter threshold meteorologists associate with violent, long-track tornadoes. The morning squall line had cleared. The atmosphere was recovering, reloading. By early afternoon, discrete supercells began firing ahead of the dry line. Discrete. That word mattered. Each storm cell could ingest unadulterated warm air without competition from neighboring storms. They could sustain themselves for hours, run for hundreds of miles, intensify to extremes. The parent supercell that would produce the Hackleburg tornado initiated over eastern Mississippi in the mid-afternoon. It was one of dozens of discrete storms now exploding across the region, each one a rotating monster with the potential to drop a tornado. NWS Birmingham and Huntsville offices were already on heightened alert. Every meteorologist in the region knew what was coming. The radar screens lit up with classic supercell signatures, hook echoes, bounded weak echo regions, debris balls. The Hackleburg storm tracked northeast, crossing into Marion County, Alabama, ingesting the rich, low-level moisture, feeding on the intense wind shear, growing. At 3:05 p.m. Central Daylight Time, the tornado touched down. Location: approximately 5 miles west-southwest of Hamilton, Alabama, near Alabama Highway 19 and Sipsey Creek. Marion County. Rural farmland, scattered homes, dense forest. Initially, it was manageable. EF1 to EF2 intensity. A wedge-shaped vortex ripping through trees, tearing roofs from homes, snapping power poles. Significant damage, yes, but survivable. The kind of tornado that happens dozens of times each year across Tornado Alley. But this storm wasn't done intensifying. It was just getting started.
Pieces of something dropping in the field. So this could well be.
As the tornado approached U.S. Highway 43, something changed. The vortex underwent rapid intensification, a phase transition from a strong tornado to a catastrophic one. The rotation tightened, the winds accelerated, the wedge widened. Within minutes, the tornado transitioned to E4 intensity. It destroyed multiple homes along Highway 43, sweeping away well-built structures. A brick residence had its exterior walls collapsed. One person, traveling in a vehicle on the highway, was struck and killed. The tornado's first victim. The forward speed was blistering, 60 to 70 miles per hour. Faster than most cars drive on rural highways. If you weren't already in shelter, you were out of time. And as the storm paralleled Highway 43 toward Hackleburg, it crossed the threshold into E5. Wind speeds, 210 miles per hour. Width, 3/4 of a mile, 1,320 yards. A mature, violent wedge tornado. The kind of atmospheric phenomenon that defies comprehension. That challenges the structural integrity of anything humans build. Hackleburg didn't stand a chance.
Of a lot of it hitting earlier and the way the wind changed, and I'm filming some of it now, and you can just see the sheets of rain kind of just going in different directions.
Hackleburg, Alabama. Population 1,500. A small, tight-knit community in Marion County where everyone knew everyone, where families had lived for generations, where the Wrangler jeans plant on the hilltop was the economic heartbeat of the town. The tornado entered Hackleburg as a violent wedge, 3/4 of a mile wide, 210-mile-per-hour winds, moving at 70 miles per hour. It took seconds. The high school, obliterated. The middle school, erased. The elementary school, foundations scoured clean. The Piggly Wiggly grocery store, gone. Family Dollar, gone. 30 of the town's 31 businesses destroyed in a single pass. Homes didn't just collapse. They were granulated. Building materials reduced to fragments, windrowed into long piled lines across bare earth. The violence was evident in the condition of the debris, not scattered, but shredded, pulverized. The tornado's winds overcame the structural integrity of materials at a microscopic level. Vehicles were subjected to extreme aerodynamic forces. Cars thrown 150 to 200 yards. A school bus hurled a 1/4 mile into dense woods. In one home, a car was dropped into the kitchen, through the roof, through the second floor, into the kitchen, while the owner survived in an interior room. The National Weather Service would document specific damage indicators that confirmed E5 intensity. A well-built 4-sided brick home completely leveled, debris swept 40 yards away. The swept clean signature, the gold standard for E5 rating. Another home had its poured concrete stem walls sheared off at ground level. A rare occurrence indicating extreme lateral force at the surface. Asphalt was scoured from roads. Trees weren't just snapped. They were debarked, twisted into stubs, shredded by winds that stripped organic matter to bare wood. According to the American Red Cross, 75% of Hackleburg was destroyed. 18 people died in the Hackleburg area. Bridget Brisbois, 34. Charles Garner, 75. May Garner, 79. John Lynch, 70. Freddie Lolly, 81. Vicky Lolly, 55. Carlo and Donna Jokella, 76 and 77. Ed and Teresa Hall, 53 and 50. The list went on. Elderly residents who had no ability to reach adequate shelter. Families torn apart. Lives erased in the same 10 seconds that erased their homes.
Several storms around the Tennessee Valley. And now let's rejoin the BTT News 19.
Inside the Wrangler Distribution Center, Wade Hagedorn had made a decision that morning that saved hundreds of lives. The plant manager, a longtime Hackleburg resident, had watched the forecasts with growing unease. That morning, unusual hail had pelted the area large, destructive hail that got everyone's attention. The Storm Prediction Center's outlook was dire. James Spann on ABC 3340 was painting a picture of an historic, deadly day. Hagedorn made a call. At 2 p.m., he released the first shift workers early. Then he canceled the second shift, scheduled to start at 4 p.m. It was the first time he'd ever taken such a step because of a tornado threat. He called workers, told them to stay home. Not everyone got the message. At 3 p.m., when the tornado warning came from the National Weather Service, 14 people were inside the Hackleburg facility. The plant's tornado drill protocol was clear. Shelter in the distribution center's front office next to an interior wall under desks. At 3:25 p.m., Hagedorn spotted a worker in the parking lot retrieving something from his truck. He asked Supervisor Roger Kendrick to help get the worker inside. Kendrick opened the door. He heard it immediately. The roar, distant but approaching, a sound like no other. The deep, grinding rumble of a massive tornado. We didn't see anything because it was coming from our blind spot, Hagedorn later recalled. The tornado came, and we went into the office. 10 seconds. That's how long it took for the 369,000 square foot facility to be destroyed. Steel trusses twisted like pipe cleaners. Concrete wall panels tumbled. The roof lifted off and disintegrated. Machinery that weighed tons was thrown hundreds of yards. Inside, the 14 workers huddled under desks as the world ended around them. The noise was deafening metal screaming, concrete fracturing, the roar of 200-mile-per-hour winds. Then, suddenly, silence. Within 10 seconds of when we felt like it was hitting, it was over, Hagedorn said. The survivors started an impromptu roll call, voices calling out in the darkness and dust. You there? You there? You there? Each person answered in turn. Everyone knew who was next to them in line. Everyone, except one.
So it's past the plant?
Linda Knight, 57 years old, 32 years of service with Wrangler, didn't answer. She'd been killed when the building collapsed. The concrete wall panels that fell created, by sheer chance, a protective V shape over the other survivors, preventing them from being crushed. 13 people crawled out from under the debris into a landscape transformed. It appeared that the building had been chewed up and spit out, one survivor later described. Left behind was an indistinguishable pile that reached close to 30 feet high across the huge slab. Denim jeans from the plant were lofted into the tornado's updraft. They would later fall from the sky in Cortland, Alabama, 40 miles to the northeast. Photographs from the plant were recovered as far away as Tennessee. The extreme vertical velocities within the vortex had injected debris into the upper troposphere, where it traveled dozens of miles downwind before falling back to Earth.
For the Franklin County and Lawrence County area, this cell more than likely will be, has a history of producing a tornado, and quite probably has a tornado on the ground with it at this time, as we have had reports in the past. So you certainly need to be taking your tornado precautions immediately. Both of these cells are just
I don't know about this.
At 3:28 p.m., the tornado crossed from Marion County into Franklin County. Unlike many tornadoes that cycle in intensity weakening, then re-strengthening as the mesocyclone undergoes occlusion and reformation, the Hackleburg storm maintained E5 strength. It was a prolonged period of maximum violence that contributed to the catastrophic death toll. The tornado struck the town of Phil Campbell. Phil Campbell was a small community, even smaller than Hackleburg. And like Hackleburg, it was about to be erased. Well-built homes were swept clean from their foundations. Cars were wrapped around debarked trees. A 25-foot section of asphalt pavement was sucked up and scattered chunks 5 to 6 inches thick thrown over 1/3 of a mile away. Pavement scouring is a controversial but potent damage indicator. It requires wind speeds and pressure deficits that far exceed standard structural failure limits. Trees in Phil Campbell were debarked and twisted, reduced to wooden stubs with only fragments of branches remaining. The tornado wasn't just pushing objects over. It was creating enough lift and shear stress to overcome the tensile strength of road surfaces, the cellular structure of living wood. Mountain View Baptist Church, destroyed. The high school, demolished. Public housing units, obliterated. Survivors emerged from shelters to find familiar landmarks completely gone. A blanket of debris covering everything. Power lines down. Trees stripped. The visual geography of their hometown erased. Reverend Tim Haney of First Baptist Church in Phil Campbell had opened the church as a storm shelter. As the tornado passed, he described the soundscape, babies crying, and a blanket of people praying. The church held. When Haney stepped outside, he noted with shock, "Everything was gone except my home." 27 people died in Phil Campbell. 937 structures were destroyed. Donna Berry, 52, Neela and Zan Reese Black, 68 and 45, Jack Cox, 78, Donnie and Patricia Gentry, 63 and 50, 10-year-old Ricky Knox, Amy and Jay LeClaire, 33 and 45, entire families, longtime residents, the elderly, the young. In a community where everybody knew everybody, the grief was communal and inescapable. Everybody helped everybody. Everybody knows everybody, local official Rita Barton would later say. It was both the strength and the tragedy of small-town America. When disaster struck, it struck everyone you knew.
A half-mile wide tornado, head this way.
After Phil Campbell, the tornado didn't weaken. It broadened. As it moved into Lawrence and Limestone counties, passing through the rural community of Oak Grove, it reached a maximum width of 1.25 miles, 2,200 yards, nearly 3/4 of a mile on each side of the center. A catastrophic swath. The National Weather Service Huntsville office would later describe the damage in Oak Grove as a relative maximum in intensity well into the E5 category. This was the tornado at its absolute worst. A large, well-constructed home with extensive anchoring was swept clean from its foundation. The forensic analysis of this site was particularly significant. A Corvette sports car, a heavy, low-profile vehicle, was mangled and thrown 641 feet, that's a measured distance, not estimated, measured, over 2 football fields. Another large vehicle from the same site has never been found. It remains missing to this day. The ground scouring in Oak Grove was severe. Bare soil where homes had stood. A block home nearby was disintegrated, not collapsed, disintegrated. The only remains of a chicken house were a small piece of a metal truss. Tree damage was absolute. Large percentage of trees stripped completely bare of bark and branches. A cargo container, the kind used for shipping on trains and trucks, weighing thousands of pounds, was picked up and blown approximately 600 yards. These are the damage indicators that define E5 intensity. Not just destroyed structures, but the complete removal of everything. Scouring, granulation, the kind of wind force that is difficult to replicate in laboratory simulations. The tornado continued northeast into the community of Tanner. Tanner occupies a tragic place in meteorological history. During the 1974 super outbreak, the previous benchmark for tornado devastation in the United States, Tanner was struck by 2 5 tornadoes on the same day, April 3rd. 2 separate violent tornadoes, hours apart, devastating the same small community. And on April 27, 2011, it happened again. The Hackleburg tornado, maintaining violent intensity, struck Tanner. Homes obliterated along a wide swath. Cars carried airborne for hundreds of yards. Intense ground scarring visible in NWS aerial surveys. Survivors describe the storm as a nightmare. Homes crumbling around them as they huddled in bathrooms and interior closets. The psychological toll of being struck repeatedly, 1995 for some residents, 2011 for others, and for the older residents, memories of 1974 was immense. The repetition isn't supernatural, it's statistical probability combined with geography. Tanner sits in the Tennessee Valley, where flat terrain offers little frictional disruption to supercell inflow. Long-track supercells, traversing from Mississippi into Alabama, often pass through this corridor. The meteorology is unforgiving.
Here we are, the 27th of April, 2011. Possible wedge tornado passing just to our west. There's the Decatur, the railroad tracks. We're on the Helen Keller Bridge, the Lightning Max. We believe to be a large, violent tornado just to our west. We zoom in on it. Zoom in on it now. I believe it's right there.
The storm continued into Madison County, striking the Harvest area, specifically the Anderson Hills subdivision. Anderson Hills had been devastated by a 4 tornado in 1995. Well-constructed homes destroyed, lives lost. The community rebuilt. And on April 27, 2011, 16 years later, it was hit again. Well-constructed homes suffered complete wall collapse, consistent with low-end E4 winds approximately 170 miles per hour. The tornado had weakened slightly from its Oak Grove peak, but it was still catastrophic. James Redman had lived in Anderson Hills for over 20 years. He'd survived the 1995 strike. This was the second time, he recalled. The first time was a direct hit. We got taken out. The lesson from 1995, the absolute necessity of underground shelter, kept his family safe in 2011, though the psychological toll was crushing. Residents spoke of Anderson Hills being a tornado magnet. Local folklore attributed it to geography, topography, bad luck. The reality is more mundane, but no less cruel. It's a favorable location for supercells tracking across northern Alabama, and statistics catch up eventually. The official National Weather Service record lists the Hackleburg Phil Campbell tornado as a continuous track of 132 miles, starting in Marion County, Alabama, and dissipating in Franklin County, Tennessee. A single, long-lived vortex that traversed multiple counties and state lines without lifting. But research from the University of Alabama in Huntsville, using high-resolution aerial imagery and radar data from the Armor system, challenges that conclusion. Their findings indicate a break in the damage path northwest of Meridianville, Alabama. According to their analysis, the primary Hackleburg vortex, the E5, dissipated after 103.19 miles. An 18-mile gap followed where no tornado damage occurred, confirmed by both satellite imagery and ground surveys. After that gap, a new rotation formed and produced a separate EF3 tornado in Huntland, Tennessee. The distinction is physically significant. It suggests the parent supercell underwent a cycling process, occluding the old mesocyclone, generating a new one, rather than maintaining a single steady-state vortex for the entire duration. However, for the victims on the ground, the distinction is largely academic. The supercell responsible for the devastation remained potent and deadly across the entire corridor. The violence of the Hackleburg to Harvest segment remains undisputed. 102 or 132 miles. Either way, it was one of the longest-tracked violent tornadoes in modern American history.
Coverage on WDRM 102.1 FM, Decatur, Athens, Huntsville. Tornado warnings right now for. I'm filming here.
No, we're in Moulton.
Should be in a safe place.
Heavy rainfall across much of Limestone County right now.
Sucking up in there. Yeah, well, it's gonna suck when we get sucked up in there.
Capshaw, Pete's Corner.
Right.
Very heavy rainfall, and hopefully.
That's what I saw right before it hit me. Yeah, it's kind of like.
At 4:50 p.m. Central Daylight Time, or 5:40 p.m. by some accounts. Sources conflict. The tornado finally lifted. Duration, approximately 2 hours and 35 minutes. 155 minutes of continuous or near-continuous devastation. By the time the parent supercell finally weakened and the rotation dissipated, the damage was done. A scar across northern Alabama, 72 people dead, at least 145 injured. $1.2 to $9 billion in damage 2011 USD. But April 27th wasn't over. Across Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, Georgia, dozens of other tornadoes were still on the ground. The Tuscaloosa-Birmingham E4 was tearing through populated areas, killing 65. The Smithville, Mississippi E5 was obliterating that small town. The Rainsville E5. The Philadelphia E5. Violent tornadoes everywhere. By midnight, 216 tornadoes had touched down, the largest single-day tornado count in recorded history. Dawn on April 28th revealed the scope of the catastrophe. In Hackleburg, searchers picked through mountains of debris, twisted metal, shredded wood, personal belongings scattered across miles. The search for survivors became a search for the missing, then a search for the dead. The Alabama National Guard mobilized rapidly, approximately 3,000 troops deployed by May 5th. They conducted search and rescue operations, distributed supplies, provided generators to overwhelmed hospitals. FEMA teams arrived. The Red Cross opened multiple shelters. President Barack Obama approved a major disaster declaration on April 28th, FEMA 1971-DR, for 43 Alabama counties, including Marion and Franklin. Federal assistance for recovery flowed in, but nothing could bring back the 72 lives lost.
Tornado on the ground, debris falling out of the sky.
The final numbers were staggering. Statewide, the April 27th outbreak killed 252 people in Alabama alone. 62 tornadoes touched down in the state in an 18-hour period, 3 rated E5, 8 rated E4. The Hackleburg tornado, specifically, 72 deaths later, revised to 71, as one Phil Campbell resident who died in Hackleburg was double counted. At least 145 injuries. $1.2 to $9 billion in damage. 2+ miles of continuous devastation. Deadliest single tornado in Alabama history. Deadliest U.S. tornado since the 1955 Udall, Kansas tornado that killed 80 passant. In Hackleburg, 75% of the town destroyed. 495 structures damaged along a 25-mile path through Marion County alone. In Phil Campbell, 937 structures destroyed. In all, over 23,000 homes destroyed or damaged statewide. For Hackleburg, the question became existential. Would Wrangler rebuild? The distribution center represented 50% of the town's tax base. 150 jobs in a town of 1,500 people. Without it, Hackleburg faced economic collapse. VF Corporation, Wrangler's parent company, mourned the loss of Linda Knight. They faced a difficult decision. The plant was completely destroyed. They could collect insurance, relocate operations to another existing facility, write off the loss. From a pure business perspective, walking away made sense. But VF assembled a decision-making team. Operations, distribution, finance, tax departments. From the beginning, because we had a facility in Hackleburg that was very efficient and doing a great job for us, the idea was, why would we not rebuild? Said Sam Tucker, Vice President of Human Resources. But we tasked this group with this. Hard as it is, we don't want to make this decision on emotion. We want reasons based on facts. The facts. Hackleburg's location was close to Memphis, well situated for shipping to the southeast. The workforce was trained, veteran, loyal. VF had maintained a presence in Hackleburg since 1966. Out of 150 workers, 135 chose to keep their jobs with VF, willing to commute to temporary facilities while waiting for a decision. Alabama Governor Robert Bentley called VF CEO Eric Wiseman personally. The state contributed $31 million in incentives. Hackleburg added $200,000. In July 2011, VF announced they would rebuild. The new facility would be state-of-the-art, highly automated, employing 200 workers when complete. Without Wrangler, Hackleburg is a community, not a town, said Marion County Commissioner Don Barnwell. The decision became a symbol of corporate commitment and community resilience.
Is that him right there? On top. Right. Hey, this is too close, man.
Phil Campbell's recovery had an unusual chapter. Documentary filmmaker Andrew Reed had previously organized a convention of people named Phil Campbell, a quirky gathering in the town where 18 people named Phil Campbell from locations including Alaska, Australia, and Scotland met annually. After the tornado, Reed redirected the group's focus to disaster relief. The Phil Campbells from around the world traveled to Alabama to assist in cleanup, forming partnerships with Habitat for Humanity. The surreal but uplifting effort garnered national attention, bringing volunteers and donations to a town that desperately needed both. The psychological impact on survivors was profound and lasting. Survivors reported symptoms of PTSD, severe anxiety during subsequent storms, audible hallucinations of tornado sirens, flashbacks to the roar of the wind. In communities where everyone knew everyone, the grief was inescapable. You didn't just lose neighbors. You lost friends, family members, the fabric of daily life. Don and Sis Sanders, survivors of the Shoal Creek tornado, later that same evening, described seeing a cross, negative, 2 pieces of wood, fused together in the rubble. It became a spiritual touchstone, a symbol of faith amid devastation. In Hackleburg, Brandy Abels lost her father, Rodney, to a second tornado that struck Marion County later that afternoon. Rodney had been desperately trying to find out if his wife, who worked at the Wrangler plant, had survived the first tornado. He died at home before learning she was safe. 1 week prior to him getting killed in the tornado, he was saved, Brandy later said, tears streaming. So that makes me have comfort to know that he was saved. That's how I get through it. James Spann, the meteorologist who spent 10 hours on air, admitted years later, "I've really not processed everything that happened that day 10 years later. I don't think I ever will. That day will certainly be part of my soul for a long time."
I can't get it close. I can't get it to...
On April 26, 2013, 2 years, almost to the day, after the tornado, the rebuilt Wrangler Distribution Center officially reopened. Governor Bentley cut the ribbon alongside VF CEO Eric Wiseman and plant manager Wade Hagedorn. 150 employees stood on each side. Inside, a conveyor system 2 miles long, capable of handling 27 million pairs of jeans per year, a 369,000 square foot facility gleaming with new equipment. But before the celebration, there was remembrance. A memorial was unveiled at the plant entrance, a mesh screen etched with the names of all 71 people killed by the tornado across the neighboring counties. Wade Hagedorn spoke simply. "There was no question we wanted to do something to honor their memory. This will hang in the entrance, and everyone who goes into the plant will see their names and remember their sacrifices." At 3:28 p.m. that day, 75 people gathered along Highway 43 in Hackleburg. They stood in silence to mark the moment, the exact minute the E5 tornado had arrived to change their town forever.
Back here.
Yeah, just right here in this corner.
How?
Get on back here in this corner.
Back here in the corner, David.
You don't never know what that door will do.
David!
That's right with me.
14 years later, the scars remain. Empty lots in downtown Hackleburg and Phil Campbell serve as silent memorials to businesses and homes that never returned. The population of Phil Campbell declined as residents, unable to find housing or overcome trauma, moved away. Mayor Darrell Colburn stood in front of an empty lot across from Hackleburg's rebuilt City Hall in 2021. In your mind, you're always thinking about what used to be. It seemed like everything you wouldn't want to get hit got hit that day. The town still lacks sufficient retail space. The trees are small, if they exist at all. In a place once named for its abundant hackberry trees, the forest hasn't fully recovered, but neither has it been defeated.
This side of the Fairview, near the power substation, which is probably why the power is out. A lot of reports during power outages.
She said this thing came live.
The Hackleburg Phil Campbell tornado reshaped severe weather science. It demonstrated the upper bounds of atmospheric energy pavement scouring, debris granulation, long-distance debris, transport at high forward speeds. Research found that over half the debris signatures in the entire 2011 outbreak database originated from this single tornado. It challenged building codes, revealed that at wind speeds approaching 200+ miles per hour, even well-anchored homes can fail when foundation material itself becomes the failure point. Proved that above-ground structures, no matter how well built, cannot survive E5 winds. The mean lead time for tornado warnings on April 27th was 22.1 minutes. Probability of detection, 89%. From a meteorological science perspective, the warning process worked excellently. Yet 252 people died in Alabama. The lesson: warnings are necessary but not sufficient. You need underground shelter. You need a culture of preparedness. You need people to take warnings seriously despite high false alarm rates. Meteorologists like James Spann have since worked to reduce false alarm rates, now around 1/3 instead of the majority in 2011. Technology has improved. Dual polarization radar, debris signature detection, faster warning dissemination through smartphones and social media. But nature still has the upper hand.
This is the first time I have ever seen this. They are blocking traffic on US 231. US Highway 31, sorry, correction, US 31, to let a violent tornado pass to the north through Tanner.
What survives when everything else is destroyed? Erin Flanagan was 17, a senior in high school preparing to graduate when the tornado struck Hackleburg. She stayed, raised her 2 sons there. "I try not to dwell on the things that we lost that day," she said. "I'm just thankful for the friendships that we gained and how everyone just came together to help us." The Wrangler plant workers Myra Hall, 33 years of service. Charlotte Walter, 20 years. Donna Frederick, 15 years. All chose to stay with the company, commuting to temporary facilities, waiting for the rebuild. Wrangler stepped up to the plate, Hall said. "I mean, they took care of us." Reverend Tim Haney, who sheltered people in First Baptist Church as the tornado passed, witnessed the communal response. Survivors climbing through windows of destroyed hardware stores, not to loot, but to get what they needed and write down what they owed. The social fabric held when concrete and steel failed.
Wow. Look around the book. I know those clouds are going that way.
The Hackleburg Phil Campbell tornado of April 27, 2011 remains a definitive event in the study of severe weather. It stands alongside the Tri-State tornado of 1925, the Jarrell tornado of 1997, the Bridge Creek Moor tornado of 1999, and the Joplin tornado of 2011 as a benchmark of atmospheric violence. 102 miles, 72 lives, 2 hours and 35 minutes. 10 seconds to destroy a building, seconds to sweep a home from its foundation, seconds to change a town forever, but also seconds to make the decision that saves hundreds of lives. Wade Hagedorn releasing workers early. Roger Kendrick getting that last person inside. Communities rallying around each other when the storm passed. The tornado destroyed buildings. It tested the structural integrity of communities. And while concrete and steel may fail, while trees may be stripped bare, while towns may be erased from their foundations, the human response, reinforced by faith, community, and external aid, remained unbroken. April 27th, 2011, the day the sky fell across Alabama, the day 72 souls were lost to the most powerful force in nature. Their names are etched in mesh at the Wrangler plant entrance. Remembered every April 27th at 3:28 p.m. Honored in the resilience of those who stayed, who rebuilt, who refused to let their towns die. The Hackleburg monster, Alabama's deadliest tornado. A reminder that the atmosphere's capacity for violence is matched only by the human capacity to endure, to grieve, to heal, and to remember.